Hey, how's it going? I'm Ben Lindell, and today I'm going to be showing you how to set up for reamping, as well as a couple of creative uses for it. All I'm going to be using today is my Universal Audio Apollo and my MacBook Pro. So let's just get started. So the main reason I find myself reamping tracks is if I get a DI track, such as a bass, that just feels a little lifeless and doesn't have a lot of character. By running it back through a real bass amp, I'm going to be adding in that character and also have a chance to add some depth to the track. So I'm going to start with a bass DI, just plugged straight into the interface, and then I'm going to output it through a reamp box, into my Ampeg flip top, through a microphone, back into my Apollo, and then into Pro Tools. So let's set that up. So I'm going to plug a cable into the output 3 of my interface. And then I'm going to plug in the other end of that cable into my reamping box. Today I'm using the Little Labs Red Eye. So what this reamping box is doing is it's bringing the level of the signal down and the impedance up to a signal that the amp is expecting to see. It also has an output trim on it, so I can bring down the level a little bit more if need be. Next, I plug my instrument cable into the reamp box, and then take the other end and plug it into my amp. Today I'm using the Ampeg SB12 flip top amp, and this amp has a ton of character and a really cool vibe to it, which is exactly what I'm looking to add to my DI track. Next, I'm going to set up my microphone. And then, of course, plug it back into my interface. Now, back in my DAW, I'm going to create a new audio track for my reamp signal. Set its input to number 1, because that's where I plugged my microphone into. Output 1, 2 is fine. I'm going to rename it bass reamped. And in the comments, I'm going to write RE20, because that's the microphone I'm using. And of course, because of my OCD, it needs to have the same color as the DI track. So here's the signal I'm going to be feeding to the amp. And here's just the reamp signal as I record it. So let's take another listen to just the bass DI track. Notice how you can really hear the fingers on the bass, and there's also a lot of transients. Check it out. Now let's take another listen to the reamped bass signal. Now you'll notice the fingers just disappear and the bottom end changes. It doesn't get fatter or thinner, it's different. And then also you'll notice there's some depth or some room tone to it, which I really like. So let's check it out. Now let's take a second and listen to these tracks in context with the drums. So here's the bass DI with the drums. Sounds pretty nice. And now here's the reamp signal with the drums. So hearing both these tracks in context, I definitely hear things about both of them that I really like. I'm pretty sure when I go to mix this, I'll be using a blend of the two of them to get my bass sound. So let's keep moving forward and try reamping a guitar. So for the second example, instead of using a reamping box, I'm going to be using just a passive DI. This will allow me to output to 2 amps, so I can blend or choose one or the other between 2 guitar amps. So I'm going to be using this passive DI backwards, sending the output of my interface to what's normally used as the output of the DI, and then what's normally used as the input of the DI will be going to my guitar amps. So once again, I'm going to be using output number 3 from my interface. So I plug my cable into there, and then I plug the other end into my DI box. Notice I had to use a female to female XLR adapter to get the gender correct. Then I plug in an instrument cable from my DI into my first guitar amp. And I think I'll use this one right here, the Fender Bandmaster. Give that some power. And then for my second amp, I'm going to be using the Sears Silvertone. So I plug in another cable. So on the Bandmaster, I'm going to place the Shure SM57 somewhere out in front of it. Then I'm going to plug this straight into my interface. And on my Silvertone amp, I'm going to be using the Bear Dynamic 201. Going into channel 2 of my interface. So once again, back on my DAW, I'm going to set up 2 new tracks for my reamp returns. All right, input 1, input 2. Let's give these guys names. Guitar, solo, reamped, Bandmaster. And that's with a SM57. My second track, guitar, solo, reamped, Silvertone. And that's with the M201. Okay? Now when using a passive DI box, the first thing you're going to notice is that it doesn't do such a good job of bringing the level down. So when I copy my reamp send over to my guitar track, first thing I need to make sure I do is bring it down so I don't damage my amps. I'm going to start with it completely off and then slowly bring it up and adjust the levels of my amps. So now we're going to listen to the dry signal while I record the reamp returns. So now let's check out what the amps sound like. First, the Bandmaster. Okay, now let's listen to the Silvertone. So now I have 3 totally different tones to play with. I have the Silvertone, which is really nice and warm, but a little bit muffled. I have the Bandmaster, which has a lot of presence and realness to it. And I also have the DI track, which I may not even need to use anymore. So when I go to mix this, I'm sure I'll have a lot of fun. Now for our third example, I'm going to be showing you a really creative use of reamping. I'm going to be using the same setup as I did for the bass DI track, except this time I'm going to be sending a vocal through it. So I'm going to be capturing the vocal through the Red-Eye reamp box, back through the Ampeg flip top, captured by my Bach Audio iFET microphone, and then back into the Apollo. Now the purpose of reamping this vocal isn't so much to capture the tone of the amp as it is to capture the sound of this room. So I don't really need to leave my microphone right up next to the amp. In fact, I'm going to move it a few feet away and just point it wherever. Alright, so now let's check out what that reamp signal sounds like.
I've been waiting for my real love to come. Oh, I can't picture myself with anyone but you. Only got it with you.
So that sounds pretty interesting, right? You can hear some of the room tone and the character of the amp coming through there. Now, let's check out what it sounds like together. I'm going to start with the reamp signal off and then slowly bring it in so you can hear the difference.
I've been waiting for my real love to come. Oh, I can't picture myself with anyone but you. Only got it with you.
So you hear how the tone of the lead changes? You can hear just a little more presence and a little drive to it, and then also a little bit more space. Let me do a quick A-B for you of just the first line. Again, here's just the dry acapella.
I've been waiting for my real love to come, oh.
And here's with the reamp signal added.
I've been waiting for my real love to come, oh.
So you can hear quite a difference when I add the reamped vocal to the original vocal. Adds a little bit of distance, adds this cool charactered tone to it that may need some EQ when I go to mix it, but it's definitely interesting and vibey. So beyond your simple reamping of a guitar or bass DI, there's an infinite number of creative uses for reamping, like the vocal I showed you. You can also reamp snare drums, kicks, toms, synthesizers. I've even heard of people running the whole mix out into the live room and then capturing the ambience and blending that in with their mix. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time.